The alarm pierced through Nellie's Air Force Base at 3:47 hours, shattering the Nevada desert silence like glass against concrete. In the ready room, pilots scrambled from their bunks, boots hitting linoleum in synchronized chaos. But among the thundering footsteps and barked commands, one figure moved differently, slower, more deliberate, as if she'd done this dance 1,000 times before. Captain Lydia Phoenix Rains pulled her flight suit over shoulders that bore no visible scars, though those who knew how to look could see the weight they carried. At 34, she was older than most of the hotshots around her, and they made sure she knew it. The whispers followed her like contrails: desk jockey, has-been, transport pilot playing fighter pilot. What they didn't know, what classified files buried in Pentagon vaults could never tell them, was that Phoenix had once been the most feared pilot in contested airspace, with 11 confirmed kills in aircraft that officially never existed. Unknown contact, bearing 027, altitude Angels 25, speed Mach 1.8 and climbing. The controller's voice crackled through the briefing room speakers, professional but tight with tension. Satellite imagery flickered on the main screen, a dark silhouette against storm clouds, too angular to be civilian, too advanced to be anything in the recognition manuals. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Viper Thompson, squadron commander and poster boy for Air Force recruiting, stepped forward. His jaw was carved from granite, his confidence bulletproof. "Gentlemen, we have an unidentified bogey penetrating restricted airspace. Standard intercept protocol, weapons free on my command." His eyes swept the room, settling on Phoenix with barely concealed irritation. "Rains, your flying wing. Try to keep up." The younger pilot snickered. Phoenix said nothing, but her fingers found the worn patch on her sleeve, a mythical bird rising from flames, faded now from too many washings. The emblem meant nothing to them. They'd never heard of Operation Shadowfall, never knew that patch once struck terror into enemy hearts across 3 continents. As they suited up, Phoenix caught her reflection in a helmet visor. Gray eyes that had seen too much, premature lines etched by G-forces and guilt. The face of someone carrying secrets too heavy for regulation shoulders. Today, those secrets might finally matter again. The hangar doors yawned open like the mouth of some mechanical beast, revealing 2 F-22 Raptors gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. Phoenix ran her pre-flight with mechanical precision, while Viper postured for the ground crew, his voice carrying across the tarmac. Just another day at the office, boys. Probably some foreign pilot who took a wrong turn. But Phoenix knew better. The way the bogey moved, the altitude, the speed, it all felt familiar, like an old nightmare clawing its way back to the surface. She'd seen aircraft like this before, in places that didn't exist on any map. The twin Pratt and Whitney engines of her Raptor spooled up with a sound like controlled thunder. Phoenix felt the familiar weight of G-suit and helmet, the sacred ritual of pilot and machine becoming one. As her canopy sealed with a hydraulic hiss, the outside world fell away, leaving only the soft glow of instruments and the eternal sky beyond. "Tower, Viper flight, ready for departure." Thompson's voice filled the comm channel, all swagger and certainty. Phoenix remained silent, her hands moving over controls with the muscle memory of a virtuoso. The Raptor responded like an extension of her will, 62,000 pounds of thrust and stealth technology waiting to be unleashed. They lifted off into the pre-dawn darkness, afterburners painting orange streaks against the star-filled canvas above. Below, the Nevada landscape spread out like a circuit board, all lights and geometric patterns. But Phoenix's attention was fixed ahead, on the mystery that waited in the thin air at 25,000 feet. The bogey that moved like a ghost and registered on sensors like a whisper. As they climbed through 15,000 feet, Phoenix allowed herself a grim smile. For 3 years, she'd endured the sideways glances and whispered jokes. For 3 years, she'd played the part of the washed-up transport pilot, grateful for whatever scraps the Air Force threw her way. But now, with unknown dangers gathering in the night sky, They were about to learn why she'd once been called the Phoenix. Because legends don't die, they just wait for the right moment to rise again. The Raptors sliced through the darkness at Mach 1.5, their stealth profiles invisible to conventional radar, but not to Phoenix's experienced eyes. She could feel Viper's tension through the radio silence, his earlier bravado evaporating as they climbed toward whatever waited for them in the killing zone above. The desert floor fell away beneath them, a tapestry of shadows and scattered lights that reminded Phoenix of other nights, other missions, when the margin between success and catastrophe had been measured in milliseconds. Phoenix, maintain position 2 clicks off my starboard wing. Viper's voice crackled through her helmet speakers, professional but lacking its earlier confidence. Stick to the script and let me handle first contact. She didn't respond immediately, her attention focused on the subtle changes in her aircraft's behavior as they reached rarefied air. The Raptor was a magnificent machine, but it was also unforgiving, a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon, a loaded gun in the hands of anyone else. Phoenix had flown enough different aircraft to know the difference between pilots who flew their machines and pilots who became them. Copy lead. Her response was crisp, military correct, giving no hint of the thoughts churning beneath the surface. 3 years of flying cargo runs and training sorties had dulled some of her edge, but muscle memory was returning with each passing minute. The way her hands found controls without conscious thought, the unconscious calculation of angles and velocities, the Predator's awareness of the sky around her, all of it flooding back like water through a broken dam. At 20,000 feet, their targets appeared on scope. Not one bogey, but 3, flying in a perfect delta formation that spoke of military training and hostile intent. Phoenix's blood ran cold as she recognized the configuration, a classic hunter-killer setup, with 2 fighters providing top cover for a larger platform below. Viper lead, I count 3 contacts, repeat, 3 contacts. Configuration suggests strike package. Phoenix's voice remained steady, but her heart rate spiked as training and experience collided with present reality. She'd seen formations like this before, in briefings that officially never happened, involving aircraft that didn't exist in any public database. Confirmed, Phoenix, switching to encrypted channel. Viper's professionalism couldn't quite mask the tension creeping into his voice. The Playboy pilot was discovering that real aerial combat bore little resemblance to Top Gun fantasies and simulator runs. The encrypted channel crackled to life with voices from their control center. Viper Flight Control, be advised, contacts are not responding to IFF interrogation. You are cleared to approach and identify, weapons tight until authorized. Phoenix watched her radar display with growing unease. The bogies were maintaining course and altitude, showing no reaction to the approaching Raptors. Either they were supremely confident or supremely dangerous, possibly both. In her experience, aircraft that ignored F-22s usually had good reason to do so. Viper, recommend we split formation, Phoenix transmitted, her tactical mind automatically calculating intercept angles and escape routes. If these guys are hostile, we're presenting them with a textbook target in close formation. Negative, Phoenix, we maintain formation per standard protocol. Thompson's response was sharp, brooking no argument. I know what I'm doing. Phoenix bit back her response, remembering 100 briefings where ego had trumped tactics, where protocol had mattered more than lives. But she also remembered the weight of medals pinned to her chest in classified ceremonies, the handshakes from generals whose names appeared in no public records, the quiet pride of missions accomplished and comrades brought home alive. As they closed to within 15 miles of the unknown formation, Phoenix made a decision that would change everything. Her thumb moved to the radio selector, switching to a frequency she hadn't used in 3 years, a frequency that officially didn't exist. Shadowbird Control, Phoenix 77, Authentication Charlie Delta November. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of old promises and older secrets. The response came immediately, as if someone had been waiting 3 years for her call. Phoenix 77, Shadowbird Control. Authentication confirmed. We've been watching your approach. Advise extreme caution. You're about to meet old friends who aren't feeling friendly. Viper's voice cut across the comm channel, sharp with confusion. Phoenix, what the hell was that transmission? You're off frequency. But Phoenix was already diving, her Raptor peeling away from formation as her threat warning system suddenly erupted in electronic screams. The sky ahead exploded into chaos as the unknown aircraft revealed their true nature, launching missiles that moved faster than anything in the public aerospace inventory. Viper, brake left. Phoenix's shout came a heartbeat too late. The first missile, a sleek dart of death in mathematics, tracked toward Thompson's aircraft with the relentless precision of fate itself. In that moment, watching the contrail arrow toward her squadron commander, Phoenix felt the last 3 years of carefully constructed anonymity crumble away. Time dilated as it always did in combat, seconds stretching like taffy while her mind processed threats and options at superhuman speed. The Raptor responded to her inputs before she was consciously aware of making them, diving and turning with liquid grace that defied physics and common sense. This was what she had been born to do. The missile's proximity fuse detonated 30 meters from Viper's aircraft, close enough to shred his starboard wing and send him into an uncontrolled spin toward the desert floor. Phoenix watched his ejection seat fire, a tiny spark of orange light against the vast darkness, and felt something cold and familiar settle in her chest. She was alone now, facing 3 unknown aircraft with capabilities that matched or exceeded her own. The smart play would be to retreat, to call for backup, to follow doctrine and live to fight another day. But Phoenix had never been known for smart plays. Control, Phoenix 77. Viper is down, pilot ejected. I am engaging. Her voice carried no emotion, no fear, only the calm certainty of a professional about to do what she did best. The response from Shadowbird Control was immediate. Phoenix, negative on engagement. RTB immediately, repeat, RTB immediately. But Phoenix was already turning toward the enemy formation, her Raptor's nose swinging onto an intercept course like the pointer of some deadly compass. The unknown aircraft were spreading out now, recognizing the threat she represented even if they couldn't yet see her on their screens. Control, this is Phoenix 77. Her voice was soft, almost conversational, but it carried undertones that made grown men in classified facilities hold their breath. Tell me something. Do they still call me the Phoenix because I rise from ashes, or because I leave them behind? The silence on the radio was absolute. Below, in a bunker buried beneath Nevada hardpan, a general who had once pinned a medal to her chest whispered a prayer to gods he wasn't sure existed. Above, in the killing sky where legends were born and warriors found their true names, Captain Lydia Raines prepared to remind the world why some secrets were worth keeping. The first enemy aircraft turned to meet her head-on, its pilot apparently unaware that he was about to dance with a ghost. Phoenix selected her first missile and whispered words that had once struck terror into hearts across 3 continents. Time to rise. The Raptor's targeting computer achieved lock-on with a soft chime that sounded like death's dinner bell. Phoenix's finger hovered over the release button, muscle memory and moral certainty aligned for the first time in 3 years. The aircraft rushing toward her was no longer unknown. She recognized its distinctive profile from intelligence briefs that had crossed her desk in another life, when she'd flown missions that existed only in the shadows between official history and classified necessity. Fox 2, she transmitted, squeezing the trigger. The AIM-9X Sidewinder dropped from her weapons bay with mechanical precision, its seeker head immediately acquiring the infrared signature of her target. The missile accelerated away on a pillar of flame and smoke, covering the intervening distance in seconds that felt like hours. The enemy pilot was good, very good. His aircraft twisted through evasive maneuvers that would have defeated most missiles and killed most pilots, pulling Gs that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. But Phoenix had faced pilots like this before, in skis above countries that didn't appear on CNN, and she knew their capabilities as well as their limitations. The Sidewinder's proximity warhead detonated 40 feet from the enemy fighter, filling the sky with tungsten fragments that turned aircraft into scrap metal and pilots into statistics. Phoenix watched the fireball expand in her peripheral vision, already turning her attention to the next threat. There was no time for satisfaction, no moment to appreciate the kill, only the eternal calculus of aerial combat, where hesitation was death and mercy was a luxury no one could afford. Phoenix 7-7, Splash 1, she reported, her voice as calm as if she were ordering coffee. But inside, something wild and fierce was awakening, shaking off 3 years of enforced dormancy like a tiger stretching after a long sleep. The remaining 2 aircraft were already repositioning, their pilots having witnessed their wingman's destruction and recognized that they faced something more dangerous than a routine intercept. Phoenix could almost hear their radio chatter, the terse exchanges of professionals who had suddenly realized they were no longer the hunters. Her threat warning receiver painted new contacts on her display, missiles inbound from multiple vectors, more advanced than anything in the standard inventory. Phoenix smiled grimly as she recognized the signatures. These weren't foreign aircraft at all, but prototypes from classified programs, test birds that had somehow fallen into the wrong hands. Control, Phoenix 7-7. Be advised, hostiles are flying stolen U.S. assets. Repeat, these are our birds. Her transmission carried implications that would keep intelligence analysts busy for months, assuming any of them survived the next few minutes. The response from Shadowbird Control was immediate. Phoenix, confirm your assessment. Confirmed, Control. I should know. I helped test some of these systems. Phoenix rolled inverted, diving toward the desert floor as 2 missiles streaked through the space where her aircraft had been. The Raptor's stealth characteristics made her a difficult target, but at close range, advanced seekers could still track her heat signature and radar returns. She pulled out of the dive at 5,000 feet, the desert rushing past her canopy in a blur of rock and shadow. Behind her, the 2 remaining enemy aircraft were descending to match her altitude, their pilots making the mistake of following her into the weeds where her experience and instincts gave her every advantage. "That's right, boys," she whispered, adjusting her grip on the stick. "Come down and play in my backyard." The first aircraft came in from her 11 o'clock, nose pointed at her position in what looked like a perfect intercept. But Phoenix had been flying combat missions since before this pilot had learned to shave, and she could read the subtle signs that distinguished confidence from overconfidence, skill from recklessness. She waited until the last possible moment, then pulled into a vertical climb that would have stalled any conventional fighter. The Raptor's thrust vectoring nozzles deflected downward, creating impossible angles of attack that turned physics into poetry. Her opponent's shot passed below, his pilot fighting to reacquire a target that had seemingly vanished from the physical world. Phoenix completed her loop at the top, diving down behind the enemy fighter with the sun at her back. The second aircraft was turning to assist, but he was still 4 miles away and climbing, too far to matter in the next few seconds. "Fox 2, she transmitted again, launching her second Sidewinder at point-blank range. This time there was no dramatic chase, no desperate evasive maneuvers. The missile simply reached out and touched the enemy fighter, erasing it from existence in a brief, brilliant flash. Phoenix 7-7, Splash 2. Her voice remained steady, professional, but something had changed in its timbre. The transport pilot, the desk jockey, the washed-up has-been, all of those carefully constructed personas were burning away like morning mist, revealing the predator beneath. The final enemy aircraft had gained altitude and distance, its pilot showing the wisdom of experience. Phoenix could see him on her scope, circling at maximum range like a wolf testing the defenses of a larger predator. This one wouldn't make the mistakes of his wingmen. Control, Phoenix 7-7. One hostile remaining, approximate position 30 miles northwest, altitude Angels 35. Phoenix climbed toward her final opponent, her Raptor's engines singing their song of controlled destruction. Pilot appears to have tactical experience. Recommend additional support. Negative, Phoenix. Support is still 20 minutes out. You are cleared to engage as required. Phoenix smiled for the first time since the engagement began. 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours in aerial combat. This would be settled between professionals, in the ancient arena where skill mattered more than technology, where the margin between victory and defeat was measured in heartbeats and inches. As she climbed through 25,000 feet, Phoenix caught sight of her opponent, a dark speck against the dawn sky, invisible to casual observation but unmistakable to her trained eyes. This pilot was good enough to survive while his wingmen died, skilled enough to maintain optimal positioning despite facing a superior opponent. But Phoenix was better, and they were both about to find out exactly what that meant. The dance began at 30,000 feet, two aircraft circling each other like gunslingers in a mechanical arena. Phoenix's opponent flew with textbook precision, maintaining perfect energy management and positioning as he probed for weaknesses in her defense. This wasn't some hotshot academy graduate or foreign mercenary. This was a test pilot, someone with access to classified performance data and advanced tactical training. Phoenix let him probe, matching his maneuvers while studying his patterns. Every pilot developed habits, unconscious preferences that revealed themselves under stress. The key was patience, letting the enemy reveal his nature while concealing your own. "You're good," she murmured, watching her opponent execute a perfect barrel roll that maintained his energy state while changing his attack vector. "But I know who trained you." The enemy pilot tried a vertical scissors maneuver, attempting to force Phoenix into an energy-bleeding climb where his aircraft's superior thrust-to-weight ratio would give him an advantage. It was the right tactical choice against most opponents, executed with flawless technique. But Phoenix had written parts of the manual this pilot was using. She recognized the maneuver before it began, countering with a displacement roll that kept her in the horizontal plane while the enemy climbed away. When he tried to convert his altitude advantage into a diving attack, she was already turning inside his projected flight path. "Fox 1, Phoenix transmitted, launching an AIM-120C AMRAAM from maximum range. The missile streaked away on a column of smoke, its active radar seeker searching for the target that Phoenix's fire control system had painted for it. Her opponent defeated the missile with a combination of chaff, electronic jamming, and violent maneuvering that would have impressed Phoenix under different circumstances. But the AMRAAM had served its purpose, forcing the enemy pilot to defensive measures that revealed his electronic warfare capabilities and burned precious fuel. Phoenix pressed her attack, climbing to meet her opponent as he tried to regain altitude advantage. The two aircraft merged in a high-speed pass that lasted less than 2 seconds, each pilot getting a brief glimpse of his adversary before physics separated them again. In that instant, Phoenix saw something that chilled her blood. The enemy aircraft bore no national insignia, no unit markings, nothing to identify its origins or allegiance. But painted on its vertical stabilizer was a symbol she recognized, a black phoenix rising from red flames, the mirror image of her own faded patch. "Control, Phoenix 7-7, she transmitted, her voice tight with implications she couldn't yet voice over open channels. "I need immediate background check on Project Lazarus, authentication Delta 7 Alpha." The silence that followed lasted for 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. When Shadowbird Control finally responded, the voice was different, older, carrying the weight of authority that came from corners of the Pentagon where sunlight never reached. Phoenix 77, Lazarus confirmation is code word classified. How do you have that information? Because I was there, Control. Because I helped birth the program before it was terminated. Phoenix rolled inverted, diving toward the desert floor as she spoke. And because the pilot I'm fighting is flying under my old call sign. The enemy aircraft followed her down, its pilot apparently comfortable with low-altitude maneuvering. Phoenix smiled grimly as she leveled off at 500 feet above the desert floor, the Raptor's terrain following radar, painting obstacles and safe passages in green and red light. Control, I need to know. When Project Lazarus was shut down, were all the assets recovered? Another long silence then. Negative, Phoenix. One aircraft and pilot went missing during the termination phase, presumed destroyed. Phoenix's laugh was cold as winter wind. Well, he wasn't destroyed, he was recruited. The truth was crystallizing now, pieces of a 3-year-old puzzle clicking into place with mechanical precision. Project Lazarus had been her last classified assignment, a program designed to test experimental aircraft against the best pilots the Air Force could produce. The missing pilot had been her opposite number, equally skilled but lacking her moral center, her understanding that some victories weren't worth the cost. Now he was back, flying under her identity, and using her techniques against American interests. It was personal in ways that went beyond professional rivalry, beyond national security, into realms where old ghosts settled old scores. Time to finish this, Phoenix whispered, pulling into a climb that would bring her face to face with the man who had stolen her name and perverted her legacy. Above, the imposter Phoenix waited, his aircraft silhouetted against the dawn sky like a dark angel of mechanical death. This would be more than aerial combat, it would be a reckoning. The final engagement began at 28,000 feet, where the air was thin and unforgiving, where mistakes lasted forever and skill was the only currency that mattered. Phoenix climbed toward her doppelganger with the patience of a hunter, watching his positioning and energy state with eyes that missed nothing. The imposter had clearly studied her old tactical records, because he flew with her patterns, her techniques, even her preferred angles of attack. It was like fighting her own reflection, each move countered before it was completed, each advantage neutralized by superior knowledge of her own methods. But the imposter had made one critical error. He had studied Phoenix the legend, not Phoenix the woman. He knew her documented tactics but not the intuition that had made those tactics effective, the willingness to break her own rules when the situation demanded it. "Let's see if you learned everything," Phoenix murmured, rolling into a maneuver that existed in no manual, that had been born in the desperate moments of a mission that officially never happened. The Raptor responded like an extension of her will, performing maneuvers that should have been impossible at this altitude and airspeed. The imposter's response was predictable, textbook perfect, and completely wrong for the situation. Phoenix smiled as she watched him commit to a counter that left him exposed for exactly 1.7 seconds, a window of opportunity so brief that only instinct could exploit it. Fox 2. The Sidewinder left her weapons bay like destiny given form, its seeker head locked onto a target that had nowhere to run and no time to hide. Phoenix watched the missile streak toward the aircraft bearing her stolen identity, toward the pilot who had perverted everything she'd once stood for. The imposter's aircraft exploded in a fireball that painted the dawn sky in shades of orange and gold, debris raining down toward the Nevada desert like metallic tears. Phoenix circled the wreckage once, a ritual acknowledgement of a warrior's death, then turned toward home. Control, Phoenix 77, Splash 3, all hostiles neutralized. Her voice carried the quiet satisfaction of duty completed, justice served, and old wounds finally healed. Phoenix 77, outstanding work, RTB for debrief. As Phoenix descended toward Nellie's Air Force Base, she could see emergency vehicles racing toward Viper's ejection site, their flashing lights painting abstract patterns on the desert floor. He would live, though his ego might not survive intact. Sometimes that was the price of learning hard lessons. The base appeared ahead, runway lights cutting geometric patterns through the morning shadows. Phoenix lowered her landing gear and configured for approach, the Raptor settling into the precise angles and speeds that would bring her home. Below, ground crews prepared for her arrival, unaware that they were witnessing the return of a legend. But Phoenix knew that legends were fragile things, easily tarnished by time and circumstance. What mattered wasn't the reputation she'd once carried, but the oath she'd sworn to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. As her wheels touched Nevada concrete, Phoenix felt the weight of 3-year secrets finally beginning to lift from her shoulders. The debrief lasted 6 hours and involved personnel whose names appeared on no public roster, men and women who spoke in acronyms and classified designations, who measured truth in degrees of security clearance and operational necessity. Phoenix answered their questions with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a saint, revealing just enough to satisfy their need to know while protecting secrets that weren't hers to share. When it was over, she found herself alone in a conference room with General Patricia Hayes, a woman whose career had paralleled her own through the shadowy corridors of classified aviation. Hayes wore 3 stars on her shoulders and the quiet confidence of someone who had earned them through competence rather than politics. "Lydia," Hayes said, using her given name for the first time in 3 years, "we need to talk." Phoenix leaned back in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with the adrenaline that had sustained her through the mission and its aftermath. "About what, General? About how you burned my identity to create a weapon. About how Project Lazarus was terminated because someone decided the risks outweighed the benefits. About how we got it wrong." Hayes' admission hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. "About how we let politics override operational security, how we let a good pilot disappear rather than deal with the complications of his existence." Phoenix studied the general's face, reading the subtle signs of guilt and regret that no amount of military bearing could completely conceal. He was turned, wasn't he? The missing pilot from Lazarus. Someone recruited him, gave him new identity, new purpose. "We believe so. Intelligence suggests he was working for a private military corporation, one with access to classified technology and unlimited funding. The aircraft you engaged today were stolen prototypes, systems that were supposed to be destroyed when their programs were canceled." Phoenix nodded slowly, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to form in her mind. How many other programs have had assets go missing? How many other pilots have disappeared into the black world? Hayes' silence was answer enough. Phoenix stood and walked to the window, looking out at the flight line where F-22s sat in neat rows like sleeping predators. Somewhere out there, other pilots were preparing for missions they couldn't discuss with their families, flying aircraft that didn't exist in any public database, serving a country that couldn't acknowledge their sacrifices. "You want me back," Phoenix said without turning around. It wasn't a question. "We need you back. The threats are evolving faster than our ability to counter them. Foreign powers have access to technology that shouldn't exist. Private military corporations are fielding systems that rival our best classified programs. We need pilots who can think beyond doctrine, who can adapt to threats that haven't been imagined yet." Phoenix turned to face the general, her expression unreadable. "And what makes you think I'm interested? I've spent 3 years rebuilding my life, finding peace with who I am outside the cockpit." "Because today proved that you never left the cockpit, Lydia. You just stopped flying." Hayes stood and moved to join Phoenix at the window. "Because somewhere out there, more stolen technology is being prepared for missions against American interests. Because the pilot you killed today was just the beginning." Phoenix was quiet for a long moment, watching maintenance crews service the Raptors on the flight line. Each aircraft represented millions of dollars in research and development, countless hours of engineering and testing, the accumulated knowledge of generations of aviation pioneers. But ultimately, they were just machines. It was the pilots who gave them purpose, who transformed metal and electronics into instruments of national will. "If I come back," Phoenix said finally, "I do it my way. No politics, no compromises, no half measures. If you need someone who can think beyond doctrine, then you have to be willing to let me operate beyond conventional command structures." Hayes smiled for the first time since the debrief began. "I was hoping you'd say that. There's a new program starting up, one that reports directly to people who don't exist in any organizational chart. Interested?" Phoenix looked out at the aircraft waiting on the flight line, at the young pilots preparing for missions they couldn't yet imagine, at the vast Nevada sky that held secrets worth protecting. Somewhere out there, enemies of freedom were planning operations with stolen American technology, counting on the assumption that no one could stop them. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. "When do I start?" 6 months later, Captain Lydia Phoenix Raines no longer existed in any official capacity. The woman who had once flown transport missions and endured the mockery of younger pilots had vanished into the same classified darkness that had given birth to Project Lazarus. In her place stood something new, a ghost in the machine of American air power, accountable to no conventional chain of command and constrained by no traditional rules of engagement. The program had no official name, no budget line in any Pentagon document, no headquarters that appeared on any base directory. Those who needed to know called it the Forge, a reference to the crucible where legends were made and enemies' dreams went to die. Phoenix commanded a squadron of pilots who had been carefully selected for their unique combination of skill, discretion, and moral flexibility. Warriors who understood that some battles were fought in shadows, away from the sanitizing light of congressional oversight and media attention. Her aircraft bore no national markings, no unit insignia, nothing to identify their origins or allegiance. They were painted in colors that seemed to shift with the light, coated with materials that absorbed radar waves and scattered them into electronic whispers. To conventional sensors, they were ghosts. To enemy pilots, they were harbingers of a swift and final judgment. The hangar where Phoenix now worked was buried beneath a mountain in Colorado, accessible only through tunnels that twisted through granite for miles before reaching the surface. Here, in laboratories that didn't exist, technicians who held no official positions modified aircraft that had never been built, creating capabilities that pushed the boundaries of physics and tactical imagination. Phoenix stood in the briefing room, facing 5 pilots who had been recruited from the darkest corners of military aviation. Each had distinguished himself in ways that couldn't be publicly acknowledged, in missions that had saved thousands of lives while earning no medals or official recognition. They were the best of the best, and they knew it. But more importantly, they understood the responsibility that came with such distinction. "Gentlemen," Phoenix began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had earned the right to command through blood and fire. "You've been briefed on the threat assessment. Foreign powers and private military corporations have acquired advanced American technology through theft, betrayal, and corruption. Our job is to ensure that technology never reaches its intended targets." The slides behind her showed satellite imagery of facilities in countries that officially maintained friendly relations with the United States, installations where stolen American aircraft were being reverse-engineered and modified for hostile purposes. Intelligence analysts estimated that within 2 years, enemy forces would field squadrons of aircraft with capabilities matching or exceeding the Air Force's most advanced systems. "The rules of engagement are simple," Phoenix continued. "These aircraft and their support infrastructure represent existential threats to American air superiority. They must be neutralized before they become operational. Questions?" Major David Reaper Morrison, a pilot whose service record was so classified that even his family believed he worked in base communications, raised his hand. Row for civilian casualties. Minimize where possible, but mission accomplishment takes priority. These facilities are located in remote areas specifically to reduce collateral damage concerns. Our intelligence suggests that personnel working on these projects are military contractors with full knowledge of what they're doing. Captain Alina Wraith Vasquez, who had once flown missions so secret that she'd been declared dead for 3 months to maintain operational security, leaned forward in her chair. What about international law? Some of these targets are in allied nations. Phoenix's smile was cold as mountain snow. International law assumes that nations can control technology transfers and prevent hostile actors from acquiring restricted systems. When that assumption fails, different rules apply. We operate under Presidential Finding Number 2087X, which I'm sure none of you have ever heard of. The pilots exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their understanding of the legal and moral complexities involved. They were being asked to conduct operations that walked the knife's edge between necessary and unthinkable, missions that would preserve American technological superiority while potentially violating the sovereignty of allied nations. First mission launches in 72 hours, Phoenix announced. Targets are a facility in Eastern Europe where stolen F-35 technology is being integrated into foreign airframes, and a private airfield in South America where modified Predator drones are being prepared for terrorist operations. Both require surgical precision and complete deniability. As the pilots filed out to begin their mission preparations, Phoenix remained in the briefing room, staring at the satellite imagery that showed the targets they would soon visit. Each facility represented months or years of careful planning by hostile actors, millions of dollars in stolen technology, and threats that could cost American lives if left unchecked. But they also represented something else: the failure of conventional diplomacy and deterrence, the moment when civilized nations had to acknowledge that some problems could only be solved through the application of carefully controlled violence. Phoenix had made peace with that reality years ago, in skis above countries that didn't appear on CNN, fighting enemies who respected only strength and feared only death. The intercom crackled to life. "Phoenix, you have a call on the secure line." She picked up the red phone that connected directly to offices buried beneath the Pentagon, where generals and admirals made decisions that would never appear in any public record. "This is Phoenix. Lydia, it's Hayes. How are the preparations coming?" "On schedule, General. My people are ready." "Good, because intelligence has identified additional targets. It seems our missing technology has spread further than we initially believed." Phoenix wasn't surprised. Classified systems had a way of proliferating once they left official control, spreading through networks of contractors, scientists, and military personnel who valued profit over patriotism. Every stolen secret spawned a dozen copies, each variant potentially more dangerous than the original. How many additional targets? 17 facilities across 4 continents, all showing signatures consistent with